Okay, Raider Nation, NFL fans, y'all have probably heard the news. Tom Cable will not be retained as head coach. You're not really fired when your contract is up. I made sure before the news was official. A lot of these sources seem to jump the gun, but since this was from the Raiders website and these are a lot of sources I trust, I can officially talk about it. You're lucky, Raider fans, and that yesterday's video I explained the whole process, and I'll say it again to any of you non-Raider fans or just people who don't get the point of this. ESPN and all those websites are hiding the information that we need Hue Jackson. Uh, there's the thing. Hue Jackson, his name is considered to be a hot name for people who want to coach. And you don't want Hue Jackson going to another team or coaching another team's offense when he was doing so well here. There's that theory of if it ain't broke, of don't fix the offense. Well, that's the case here. Hue Jackson took a team that was 31st overall in offense and put them up to 6th in total points in offense. That's a huge increase. Obviously, you do the math, 25 spots up the rankings. When you look at that, you don't want that to go away. And basically, Al Davis is forced to either keep Hue Jackson or keep Tom Cable. There was no way you're able to keep them both. Pretty much no one on the coaching staff is under contract right now. Everyone's contract was up, if you want to say that. Here's the other thing to know, though. It's very similar to how the Montreal Canadiens, or the Habs, as they call it, they had two goalies. One guy that did all the winning for them, Jaroslav Halak, he carried them in the playoffs, then he was traded because they had two goalies with upside, and one of them had to go. You can't have two. So in our cases, we had two choices: keep Hue Jackson or Tom Cable. Here's the thing: if Tom Cable is retained and Hue Jackson takes another job with, say, the Denver Broncos or the 49ers, those are two teams that are missing a coach, our offense will go back to square one, and that'll be horrible. Jason Campbell's horrible story of offensive coordinators having too many, not having the same person coaching him back-to-back years. He hasn't had that. And I know it was like that with his days with the Redskins and the Auburn Tigers. Our offense would be entirely just going back and reverting back to its other ways because we wouldn't have a great play caller or any kind of good play calling. People are going to point out Tom Cable, yes, he improved the win total because he was the head coach of it. But you really got to think, some of this was still disappointing. The Raiders could not stop the run. And some of that does go to credit of Tom Cable and the scheme they're running. Some of it falls on John Marshall, don't get me wrong. But Tom Cable was just soft. If you want to call it a player's coach, that's what he was. And yes, he had supported the players because he was a player's coach. But look at what a guy named Wade Phillips did for the Dallas Cowboys. He was a player's coach, and all the guys were relaxed and soft and laid back. That's the way the Raiders' defense was this year. At times, they couldn't stop the run. You look at the tape of that Jacksonville game, and we just got beat. The defensive side of the ball was horrible for us. We let guys go right after them, and that's going to fall on Tom Cable. Also, we failed to sweep the NFC West, which was a very sorry division. But, one of them, that was the player's fault. That was Janikowski missing kicks. But even during that game, they couldn't do much in the red zone when it happened. That game also goes fault to the coaching. But that 49er game was also blown, and that also goes credit to Tom Cable. So being unable to win some of the games that we could have won, it is a very deceiving 8-8 record. As much as we put stock into improving and overall rankings and going undefeated in the division, they still couldn't do much outside of the division. And it was rather a joke that we could only show up for AFC West games. As much as it is to win the division, and I like the swagger we had, we didn't have it every week, week in and week out. We were not prepared every week, week in and week out. And yes, that goes credit to Tom Cable for being soft. So either Hue Jackson is retained as coach and hopefully stays as head coach, whether we overpay him, whether we splurge, whatever we can, we need to keep him in the organization, because that is probably the only hope for this group of players to succeed. So cross your fingers on Hue Jackson, guys. My next video I'll talk about is whoever we have as our head coach. That should be my last video talking about the Raiders in this month of January. So whoever Al Davis hires, if we retain Hue Jackson, I'll talk. If someone else gets hired, whenever that person gets hired, if it's not Hue Jackson, I will talk on camera about it. So that's my quick take on Cable. You can't fault him for everything, but he does get responsibility for how soft the defense was, and just how laid back sometimes the players were. It just wasn't up there on defense. There were times it was horrible. So see y'all later. Raider Nation, let me know what you think. You should hopefully be able to see it from the perspective of Hue Jackson at least, because I don't want to see him coaching anywhere else. See you guys later.